What up? Happy Tuesday. It's Tuesday. What a day. I hope you're all having a beautiful afternoon, evening, morning, depending where you are in the world. What's up, what's up, what's up? Hi, Janae May. What's up, Ray? What's up, Black Willow? What's up, Sam? Hi, Cyrus. This is how we do it. Great song, by the way. Anna St. Clair. Hi. What's up? Rojas. Hi, Sashio. Hi, Kristen. Hi, Cheryl. Hi. 9:46 p.m. Perfect time, Joe. Hi, Kristen. What's up, B. Carms? Jennifer. Jenny Fleur. Hello. Hi, Mark. Kit Kat, what's happening? So, my dog's excited. Dog's excited that I'm talking to you, which is really great. There's a couple things that I wanted to touch on. One is that I think when we think about being powerful or standing in our voice or changing our life, it's really interesting to me that, and I say this having done it. So when I say it, it's the awareness, but I'm also like, fuck, I've done that. And that's that, in what way would it not serve everybody in our lives to make a decision that frees us? You know what I mean? Like, how is it even possible that you moving more towards love, liberation, compassion, expansion, more aligned work, more aligned life, more aligned love. And I don't mean more aligned in the state that more aligned is in someone else, because that's often what someone hears. That can be true, but I'm saying that it's not always that. I think a lot of people think it is that. And it's not always that. Sometimes more aligned love is actually adjusting the relationship we're in, aligning it. Often we choose relationships from a place of misalignment. We choose it from a place of lack. We choose it because we don't feel like we're worthy of better, more, asking for our needs to be met. And I just see that question. If you attended the workshop on the weekend, yes, check your junk mail or your junk spam folder if you got other messages. If not, you can email customer service at createthelove.com. The 8-week coaching program that I'm doing that involves not just 8 weeks with me, and we do live coaching calls and all this stuff, but we also have guest teachers, Peter Crone, Kathy Heller, Allison Bird, Selena Gray, all these masters. They're all teaching in it. We're all going to grow together for 8 weeks, and the early bird ends tonight. And so you can go to the link in my bio to check that out, or createthelove.com/edge. But yeah, what I was saying was that it is interesting to me that growing is faced with losing people, right? Like, it is faced with losing people. It's faced with losing a part of ourselves if we stay, though, in the old thing, right? Like, isn't that crazy? Like, if you stay in the old way of being, you have to die. Like, you have to die. And it's interesting because the fear is actually the death of the old circumstances, the old self, the old ways of being, the old beliefs, the old relationships. But so we fear that we're going to lose those things. So we stay and we have to die. We have to sort of be a walking zombie moving forward in our life and in our relationships. But like, how crazy is it that so many of our relationships are not based on a mutual shared agreement to expansion? And I think a lot of the time, our relationships, because sort of like if you think about how culture works, culture is not the celebration of individual expression that goes against the unspoken and spoken values of the culture, right? So let's say like an unspoken value of certain cultures is for women to be silent. It's also an unspoken value of cultures for men to be unemotional, right? To not have sadness or emotionality. So just think, those are two gender very common, and they're still quite rampant And even if it appears as if they're changing, they are changing, but they still are in the ethos of how we do things, even on an unconscious level. Like, it might be hard for a man to experience a relationship with a woman who makes more money than him, right? Because there's unconscious cultural messaging, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong, there's no moralizing of these things, but they become traps, right? There's no moralizing of saying, like, if a woman wants to be a mom and stay at home, that's a problem. No, right? Like, whether you want to be a CEO, then you're going to get shamed. You want to be a mom, you're going to get shamed, right? Like, there's no moralization. It's just to say when it feels like there's only one way of being that you're allowed to be, then it feels like a prison, right? So the real work, because culture doesn't celebrate diverse thought, because culture wants things to stay the same. Culture wants predictability. It wants the systems to stay the same. It wants you to work 9 to 5, probably even 8 to 8. It wants you to get a job working at a company. And I'm not saying there aren't beautiful jobs and beautiful companies. Remember, when we criticize something, it's not saying we're against something. It's saying that it doesn't allow for the nuance to humanity, right? And so what we really want to explore is, where do we agree to be self-expressed in certain ways that aren't in alignment, that aren't in integrity, in order to maintain belonging to the group. And sometimes that's actually important, right? Like, sometimes that's survival, sometimes that's everything. So we just have to explore, where do we not express ourselves to maintain belonging? Where does the fear of not being loved by somebody, or not being chosen by someone, or not, like, so many of the reasons I never did things that I truly wanted to do, that my soul was calling me towards, was because I was afraid of what other people would think of it. It doesn't mean that the other people actually thought that thing. The majority of the time I was stuck in the prison of what I thought they would think. It doesn't mean I didn't get feedback when I did start to self-express and people start to keep you down, keep you small. But most of it was the fear of that. It's the fear of a reality that doesn't actually exist, keeps you from living a reality that's trying to call from you, right? Like, there's something trying to be born from you. And we don't answer the soul, because so many people don't answer the soul. So if you look around you, I look around me, so many people don't answer the call. And that can be like the call to change jobs. That could be the call to learn boundaries. That could be the call to so many things. You know, I think it shows up most in relational experiences with family, we hit the limits of our depth or skill set. Depth is the wrong word. Skill set, in order to deepen our relationships with people. Most of the time, we don't actually even get the opportunity to get to know someone on a deeper level, because we don't know how to go deeper safely, because what we associate deeper with, or more love with, is more pain. So we never touch the edges of the depth, because we never want to touch where we think pain lives, which is ironic, because that's where love ultimately dwells. Isn't that crazy? The thing we fear most is actually where the thing we want most exists. And the only way to learn how to move towards what we want most is by learning how to navigate through the circumstances that we're actually afraid of recreating. So if I had trust broken by someone I love, here's the thing as kids, and I just want to remind you, if this stuff is resonating for you, this is the stuff we're like blasting through in the 8-week coaching program. This is the thing, is we just need accountability, right? Like, we need accountability to transformation. We need to invest in ourselves. We need to say yes to, like, not doing another U-turn, not pulling shoot on ourselves. And the early bird ends tonight. And that's $1,000 off tonight. And then it goes, and there's also a payment plan. But you know, like, I was interviewing Marianne Williamson yesterday, which I gotta tell you, what an honor. Marianne Williamson, like, wow. And I read her book, Return to Love, years ago. She's an incredible teacher. She's badass. She's fierce. And I always remember that quote from her because I think it's the most famous quote from her that speaks to everybody's soul. Like when I read this quote, I want you to feel, you might have beliefs that go, bullshit, or I can't do that, or that's what like, but no. I want you to just feel how it makes your body feel. Because, man, you ready? I got this hair in my mouth. Okay, I think I got it. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. Our light. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Do you fucking hear that shit? That shit is laying it down. Marianne Williamson. And you don't need the God language if that's confronting for you. If you have wounds with church, God, just say like, you're a child of love. Your playing small does not serve the fucking world. There is nothing enlightened. There's nothing fucking enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. I mean, come on. Think about that. What the fuck? We use altruism as this guard for playing small. Like, I'm just being good. I'm not ruffling any feathers. Ruffle some fucking feathers. Right? Like, ruffle some feathers. Change some shit. Shake some shit up. Shake your own shit up. Start to just maybe mix some fucking boundaries into your life. Mix some self-expression. Mix some light. Mix some joy. Allow yourself to win. Believe that you deserve to win. The only way that you will believe that you are worthy of being heard is by speaking. It's not the response to your voice that determines whether you have the right to speak. You use your voice to hear it. I love what Vasavi, by the way, is bomb. She was on my podcast. She's a power woman. Mix some creativity and fun into it. Right? Let's get some fun up in this bitch. Let's have some fun. Let's bring magic back to the way we live. We've been traumatized for the last 3 years, so let's just call that shit out. Traumatized. Fear has been fed to you like a beer bong. A fear bong. That's what's happened. You've all been fear bonged, and I have too, and it ain't like the party where I did beer bongs. It's a bad party, and it's with a bunch of people terrified of everything and want us to be terrified of everything so that, well, there's lots of reasons why, but it keeps us in the cycle, right? It keeps us in the cycle. What do you need to do when you're terrified? You need to divide. You need to attack each other. You need to eat shitty food. You need to, we're so stressed, right? This isn't saying that we don't have the right to those responses. Our biological response is to get scared, is to be in these processes and fear death. And you think about it, death can be weaponized against us as a possible outcome when we haven't explored death ourselves. Then we blame other people for the possibility of us dying, when ultimately it is always about our own responsibility and self. And I'm not saying that people don't have bad outcomes or bad things, but I'm saying we must take responsibility for our outcomes in our life, for our choices. You know, the other day I had a board behind me when I did a video, and it said, take responsibility for everything in your life. It was just a reminder for me. Because there's something so powerful when you finally say everything, and this is fucking true, by the way. You might not like this, but that's okay. It's not about being liked. It's just about let's share some truths. Everything that is in your life currently, Everything that's in your life currently is there because you said yes to it. That's it. That's just a straight truth. Everything that is occurring in your life right now is there because you are saying yes to it. Does that mean we can't have circumstances that made their way in because we've experienced trauma? No, it certainly can be true. It's not negating how we get there, but it is saying that for things to continue to exist in our lives, we have to accept that we're agreeing for them to exist. Just like if we're in toxic relationships, we have to accept that we are participating in the toxicity. We have toxicity. We are prone to toxicity. We think that the other person, who's maybe the narcissist or maybe the thing, whatever it is the problem. And while they are the problem, of course, we saying yes to that and saying that that is a problem we want to fuck with is also a challenge, right? Like that, if we just say, oh my God, I do choose that. And why do I choose that? Now we're in the money, because then we can go, why do I choose that? Okay, I got to explore that. I don't want to do that anymore. And ultimately, I was talking to Marianne Williamson about this, and I was saying, do you think you need to find the pathology of where something comes from in order to change it? She was like, no. And I was like, no, I don't think so either. I think it's helpful to know where something comes from so you can explore the pattern. But it's not necessary. All you need to know is that you want a different relationship, or you want a different life, or you want a different way of being. You want to feel better. That could actually be the greatest start to any transformation, is just knowing you want to feel better. Why do you think so many people find radical change when they have a health issue? Right? Because all of a sudden the reality that all you have is now, all you have is now, all you have is now, all you have is now. That kicks in, and then think about if we all related with the same sense of zero fuckery that you begin to relate at when you're 40 or when you're 35. And I see that statement, I want to feel seen. You have to see yourself. I see you, but that will never validate enough unless we allow ourselves to be witnessed, and unless we start self-expressing. And so we'll seek being seen by other people in order to validate that we're worthy of being seen. But it's actually in the act of expressing and witnessing ourselves that we are seen. And so it can be the motivation of someone else. I want them to see me. I want them to be the mirror of who I am. But really what ends up happening is you are actually mirroring to yourself. You're producing what it is. And if we are constantly living with the need for others, which, by the way, not picking on that statement because I've done this. When we're constantly living for the approval or choice or any of those things from other, we will always be looking for how we're self-expressing. It will go through the lens of a filter of how am I being received. When everything goes through a filter of how am I being received, then I'm not present, because I'm always living moments behind the actual moment. Because I'm never here, because I'm always thinking about how am I going to be received here. And so when you actually begin to be present and remove the filters, remember, filters isn't zero fucks. Filters being removed still means you have to be caring and conscientious about how you express. A lot of the times when we go from not expressed, we go to rage expressed. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it's not because it's the first release, right? That's why a lot of the practices of releasing voice is just like being in your car and letting out volume till you're exasperated. So you can just experience what it means to let out the energy that's being stored up, especially if you feel that lump in your throat, right? And this can happen with work, right? Like when we turn down of the volume on us in one area of our lives, you can't help but turn it down in every. You can't only access 75% of your heart in your relationship and expect 100% of your heart to be everywhere else. You'll get glimpses of it through nature. You'll get glimpses of it through a sunset. You'll get glimpses of it through the ocean or a lake or a tree. You'll have the feeling of the wholeness, right? The totality of who you are. And you'll be reminded, and that's why you'll want to go back to nature, because it reminds you that you're all of it. You're all of it. And, I think this is the most powerful work, is when you realize, you might be here, And you might have found me because of relationships. You might have found me because you want to navigate something that's going on, a breakup. You might be wanting to work through an upper limit that you hit with your partner. You might have a partner that left you. You might have any of these things. You might have a job that's challenging you. You might have found me through the podcast. All my point is, though, is that you come for something, but what you always find is yourself. Like, I promise you that no matter what reason you were brought here to this moment, the answer will be that you need to understand and get to know yourself on a deeper level and love yourself on a deeper level. That's it. To restore a sacred relationship with yourself. Because when you have reverence for yourself, you don't fuck with bullshit anymore. I said this the other day on a reel that when you operate in your life in scarcity, like there's not a better relationship within this relationship available, right? Everyone usually thinks, we gotta leave everything. And I'm not saying you don't have to leave everything. That's what people hear when they want to leave things. Or when they've been left and then they blame me that they got left, even though I'm like, shit, I didn't tell anyone to leave. It's like, when you live in a place of scarcity that there's not more available to you, that can be money, that can be job, that can be potential, that could be more available to you from you, that can be in your relationship, that can be love, that can be boundaries, that could be anything. When we live in a scarce state, we settle for bullshit. Because we don't believe, so what we do is we trade our time. I think you got this, but time is the only resource that you can't get back. Time is the only resource, at least if we're living in the 3D, which this video exists in the 3D. Maybe in the 7th dimension, we're laughing at what I'm saying right now, but in this dimension, this is true. We agreed to a thing called time, and it's happening. We got one life. There's other lives potentially happening at this time, but right now, in this incarnation, you and I got some stuff to talk about. And it's to say, if you only live once, and you only have one chance, at least in this time, and you're here for a purpose because like one sperm and one egg met, and maybe a bunch did, but two in that moment of Barry Manilow, in that moment of perhaps Adele, although that's not great music to hump to, in that moment, you were created. And you have this magic that's in you. And as Wayne Dyer says, don't let the magic die. Don't die with the magic still don't die with the music still inside you. And I resonated so much with that because when I heard that quote, I hadn't started talking about relationships. I wanted to start. I hadn't started. And when I wanted to start a podcast, I hadn't started. It was already here and I could feel it, but it didn't exist yet. And that's what stops us. The relationship, the possibility, the conversation, all of these things we've never done and we've never had, they start as a feeling. They start as a possibility and they start as a sense of, I feel like there's more to life. I feel like there's more. I feel like there's a song still inside me. And it starts with saying yes to the feeling. And the idea is that if I say yes to the feeling, this is going to be a runaway train. Shit's going to run away, and then I won't be able to catch up. And what happens if it doesn't work? But ultimately, you're not thinking about what happens if it does. What happens if it does? When we have a feeling about a possibility and potential, it already exists in another dimension, or you wouldn't feel it, right? And you could tell me, that's fucking bullshit, time's real and it's linear and all those things. Okay. But let's imagine that you imagined a version of yourself that has already achieved the thing you want to achieve. So I'd like to see in the chat, what's something you want to achieve? Relationship, love, liberation, understanding, change, revolution, whatever it is. And then I want you to imagine the version of yourself that's already there. Like the version, like if you think I want to start a podcast, you imagine yourself sitting at the mic. It's pretty easy to start a podcast. So like if that's what you're waiting to do, Kathy Heller's running a free thing right now. Go learn about it. But I'm like, and you can just go to I think there's a link in my bio for her thing because it's so good. But my point being, you can already imagine that you're sitting at a place with a podcast mic and you're like doing it. And what I would encourage you to do is whatever you're dreaming about, sit down with the future version of you and you just say, like, if it was me, I'd be like, listen, man, how'd you do it? How'd you get there? And I would be able to hear all the steps that I took, my present self took to get there. And they're going to say things you don't like. Let me tell you already, they're going to say things you don't like. You want to know what they're going to say? They're going to say, you need to quit this. You need to speak up. You need to tell your mom that she can't talk to you that way anymore. You need to tell your dad to mind his business. You need to tell your brother to get sober. You need to tell your partner this. You need to get sober. You need to clean some shit up. You need to drop the toxicity. You need to learn about anger. You're going to hear from your future self all the necessary steps that it takes for you to become. And you're not going to like all the steps. Why? Because they're going to require that you take responsibility for who you are and how you show up. You're going to do that. You're going to have to take responsibility. And listen, I'll tell you the simple ways to do that. The first one is declare it publicly. What are you going to do? What are you going to create? You declare that publicly, and now you got a bunch of people going, hey, I heard you say that. You can call out people. Don't call them out on here, because this ain't no revenge place. But like, yeah, you could say to people like, I need this from you. I need this. Like a lot of the times we don't get our needs met because we don't express them or we don't know them, and then we blame everyone else for not meeting our needs when we don't give them a chance to meet them. So the first step is accepting that you want to change, right? Like we can all just on this call, or if you're watching the recording, just go, I'm ready to change. Like I need to do this. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done doing things that don't work. And I remember doing this exercise where I was like, what am I done doing? Oh man, it was like people pleasing, this, right? So think about it. What are you done doing? Like write in the chat, what are you done doing? What are you done doing? And you know, the interesting thing, I was talking to Martha Beck this morning, and if you've heard me talk about Martha Beck, I was reading her book, The Way of Integrity, and I was like, I gotta interview Martha Beck. And yeah, I'm done doing things that don't work. Hell yeah, be with binoculars. I'm so done, Lizzie living. What are you done? Pleasing others, that's the common one. If you're living a life where you're afraid of how people respond to your expression, you are putting their emotions ahead of yours. I'm done being a victim. OMG Noli, that is powerful. Can we give an amen? I'm giving you an amen to that. I'm done chasing people, Meg, yes. But now here's the thing, as you express these, feeling less than, Lillian, what would feeling more than feel like? What would it look like? What would you be doing? Feeling like less than, it fuels behaviors that reinforce feeling less than. As soon as you make a decision that makes you feel worthy, you feel worthy. That's why you can change that feeling in 1 millisecond. We can all decide on this call right now that we're done doing bullshit. Yeah, if you can't commit, you have to ask the question, can you commit to yourself? We're like, they can't commit, so you know what? I'm going to keep trying to convince them. Are you committed to yourself? Are you committed to yourself? And you know, we don't want to shame something like worrying. You can be done worrying, but can you be? You can be done doing what the worrying does, which is paralysis, right? And so we might ask ourselves, if I was thanking the worrying for where it comes from and what it's trying to protect me from and honor it, then I would say, now, what am I ready to do that I'm worried about the outcome of? The worry of the outcome never goes away. It's just moving forward in spite of the fear. And so what does it mean to commit to yourself? It means to say, this is what I want from my life. This is what I want to create. These are what my values are. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to live surrounding these things. If you build a life around your values, you will have a beautiful life. And if you feel unwanted, it's because we don't listen to our own wants, right? Like if my want says I want someone who shows up and I stay in a relationship with people who don't show up, then I will feel unwanted and it will appear as if I'm unwanted by them, but I'm actually experiencing being unwanted by myself. Do you see the trick of the ego? The trick of the ego chases these things in other people, and we become the victim of the other people's behavior, which doesn't mean we're not, because we are. But we're the ones choosing the circumstances where we're seeking to get the thing that we can only give to ourselves. And how do you deal with challenge? You deal with it. You acknowledge it, because challenge is not a sign of misdirection or a problem. Challenge is a sign of just further expansion. You know, when you make a wish for anything in your life, which Abraham Hicks says this, when you wish for everything or anything, get out of the fucking way, because the universe is about to bring all the things you need to heal to create that. So when you're like, where are all the good men out there? Where are all the good women? There are none. And then we're like, yeah, there are none. And then we start groups where everyone goes, there are none. Not in this city. And then you insert that city and you got all that bullshit. And then we all drink wine together and we have book clubs. And no offense if you have whiny book clubs, those are really great. Or you go out for beers with your friends and you complain, or you play fantasy football. Amazing. No judgment on that. But we create these groups where all of us complain. And meanwhile, there's good people finding each other. But if we believe that there's bad people out there, which there are bad people, but if I believe that I only end up in relationship with bad people, or there are no good people, I will seek to be right more than I'll seek to be expanded. And that's the true unconscious nature of humanity, is to seek to be right, but before seeking to be expanded, seeking to be challenged. So you have to also create a value that's about being challenged. I like being challenged by the world. It teaches me where I'm not yet free. I like being challenged by the world. It teaches me where I need to grow. I like being challenged by the world because it teaches me where my blind spots are. Right? So we get to ask ourselves, what do you want to create? And then you get to say, am I committed to creating that? And you got to let go of the familiar to do that, because it starts as a feeling and it starts as a desire, and then you have to live the behaviors to create it. So you might say, I want a job I'm in love with. Right? That's a pretty common. Anyone here want a job that they love? And then we would go, what kind of life does someone who loves their job live? What kind of life does someone who loves their work live? What kind of life does someone who loves their relationship live? They're different behaviors. They're different habits. And so you wouldn't have to look far. I love my relationship. I generally love my life. But when I don't, I try to figure out how to love it again. I certainly didn't love it all the last 3 years because we've been through collective trauma. But I would ask myself, how, if I wanted to create a life I love or work I love, then how would I behave? Well, I'd only do work I love. And then we go, well, how do you do that? You still got to pay your bills. Absolutely. So then we'd say, okay, well, how can I start doing work I love? On the side, well, work I don't love pays me to figure out how to do work I love. You can learn how to do anything. You can learn how to do anything. There's literally a YouTube video on how to do everything. And so, ultimately, what you seek is not really more information, although you do want more information in the context of skill set. Me too. We want to learn how to have better boundaries, better self-expression, better ways of communicating. But ultimately, what you want is transformation, right? Kathy Heller talks about this. And transformation occurs when you're held accountable. It occurs when you surround yourself with other people who want to live with the same light. I remember the first time I ever went to a conference on positive psychology, and I studied it. And the first time I ever went to a conference on positive psychology, I was like, oh, damn, there's other people who think about these things. There's other people who think about these things. That's fucking amazing. Like, I want to be surrounded by other people who think about these things. And then you're brought alive, and then you're reminded what it means to follow the flow of that being brought alive. And then we go back to the other stuff, and we're like, yeah, but it's not for everybody. Not everybody gets to love their work. That's true. The people who choose to not move towards it. This is not to minimize the circumstances that make us not love our life. It's just like not to minimize the experience that people have suffered. This is not negating that or saying that anyone is at fault for their circumstances that they find themselves in. And this is to say, what are we going to do with it? How do we be collectively brought together to create magic? Because when you experience a revolution in yourself, you are participating in the revolution, right? Like I read that quote to you from Marianne Williamson, where at the end she says, and as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Our presence automatically liberates others. How powerful is that? And listen, I can't get to Florida right now, but when I can, I'm going to be there, and it's going to be a party. And right now I am running an 8-week online group coaching program with all the accountability. And all the people who sign up are going to be in a similar place of wanting to expand, wanting to change. And the early bird ends tonight at midnight. So click on the link in my bio and sign up if you're feeling called. There's a payment plan. The price goes up at midnight tonight. Of course, I'll go to Texas. Come on. Texas. I got to go to Texas. Toronto, I want to go over there, but I don't know if I can right now. All right. The quote is from Marianne Williamson, and you're going to have to go look at it. It is, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. We ask ourselves, who am I to be? Brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous. Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. This is my favorite line. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. It's amazing that we'll hide our own power so other people don't feel uncomfortable. It's much like we'll try to save people from feelings that we don't feel comfortable feeling ourselves. If you don't know the value of a challenge, of grief, of something, if you haven't really dug into the wisdom of grief, then you'll try to save people from grief. You won't know the value of the feeling, so you'll try to save them from it. You'll be afraid of them feeling the feeling because you don't know the value of the feeling, because you haven't explored the feeling yourself. So you're really afraid of holding space for that feeling. And that quote is from Marianne Williamson. And someone asked, how do you handle rejection? Well, listen, you change what rejection means to you. If rejection means you're unworthy, then you won't be able to handle rejection because it will always be determining how you feel about yourself. You'll think rejection is really a rejection of your soul, of your being. It is indicative of your value. And so you'll play small or you'll curate yourself in order to not experience rejection. But do you notice that when you're not experiencing healthy self-expression, which we do have to learn how to use words, we have to learn how to be in the space of other people who are safe to be with, right? We have to learn how to be discerning about that. But when we turn down who we are in order to maintain relationship, because we're afraid of rejection, we live rejection. In order to maintain the relationship, I actually have to live in a state of rejection. So I'm afraid of rejection, but I'm living rejected. So if I'm afraid that you won't love me because I express a need or something changed in my desire, this happens all the time in long-term relationships. Something changes because people change, and then they say, actually, what I'm really desiring or what I miss or what I need is this, because we most of the time forget about ourselves in relationship because we think that's romantic because that's what Disney taught us. And so it's normal to forget about yourself in relationship. And then what happens is when you're two people that complete a wholeness, then what happens is when you start to feel fractured in the relationship because you forgot about yourself so you could have a missing piece so this person could fit, but realizing you're not missing, the piece you're missing is actually a piece of yourself that you gave away to fit them in. And so when you go through this space of, I'd call it a relational awakening, it's when we can't get beyond where we are. And so what happens is we awaken in the relationship because we've hit the capacity of our skill sets. Two individuals who lose themselves for love cannot move to a deeper depth of love because the relationship is a prison to their actual truth and self-expression. And so because of that, they can't move beyond, because in order to move beyond, it actually requires the death of the relationship. It requires the death of the codependency. So when the codependency is brought to the church to be burned, most of us get enraged by this because we don't have the example or the template to move through this. And so we hate our partner, we blame them for hitting the upper limit. And this can be true, don't get me wrong. This isn't saying that we can work it through with everybody, okay? Like if you're like with a serial narcissist cheater and you're like, oh my God, if we just got to this template, if we just got to the church and the church is going, don't go to the church with them. Don't go with them. The lesson of leaving people who are like that is leaving them. The lesson is stop trying to convince people to go to the altar with you. You don't need to convince people to go to the altar. When two people want to move through and they're ready for the death of the ego that creates the original relationship, which is not a bad thing, it just is a thing. When they get to the altar, they know that the next level is this choice. Will you let all the things you thought were true die? And it doesn't have to happen with love, by the way. It can happen just by hitting the upper limits of self-abandonment that affect our bodies, that affect the inflammation in our bodies, right? Which create disease, etc. We all know that. You're in a highly stressed state where you self-abandon, don't use your voice, and you do that at work, you're going to get sick. You're in a relationship where you don't use your voice, you tolerate bullshit, you got camera videos of them banging someone else, texting someone else, and you're like, no, it's cool. It's probably that chick's just lying about it. Yeah, all 5 of them are lying. Yeah, he wouldn't do that. Meanwhile, the truth is staring us in the face. And so, how do you not get sick in circumstances where you have to deny reality? You're going to get sick because you live in a world where the truth isn't real. And when we ignore truths that are calling us forward to change, to transform, to become, to answer the call, whatever it is, you know what yours is. When we ignore those, we feel sick. When we ignore those, we are abandoning awareness to how we change, to how we transform, to what the call is. And so we come seeking an answer about relationship, about whatever, right? Like you likely came for something to do that. But the answer is always you. It's always you. Can you be you and lose things and gain yourself? And of course, people will ignore their truth their whole life. You got to think about the biological and evolutionary programming that we've received generally, right? I gave the examples early in this live. There's probably new people on here where I said that a common cultural message that it's not right or wrong, it just is that women shouldn't have an opinion, shouldn't have voice, shouldn't be powerful. Men shouldn't have emotion, shouldn't be sensitive. And so, again, there's not a moralization of these things. These are cultural messages. And so we often live our whole lives because these are strong messages. Remember, if a woman had a voice, she'd often die. Think of the burning of the witches, right? So there's a deep genetic imprint into why we have a hard time changing. Just like when a man is being asked to be emotional in order to connect deeper with his children, his family, his partner, no matter the gender, he's being asked to take on a state of revolution against the programming that is actually embedded in his DNA, right? And so these inherited patterns, and you can learn about epigenetics, but these inherited patterns show up in us. And so when you go to lay a boundary and you can't find your voice, or you want to express a need and you can't find your voice, and you come from this, if you go up, let's say you're a woman and you go up your maternal line, And you're like, well, when was the last time a woman in my family had a voice? And if I can track that far back, what was the cost? And so if you've never seen that modeled, how would you step into it? If you're looking up your paternal tree as a male and you're like, when was the last time a man had deeply connective emotion? What was the cost? And so when we try to show up in these different ways in this lifetime, we talked about dimensions, we talked about lifetime, we talked about time. When we try to change something that we've never changed, all of a sudden we're like, why is this so hard? Because we've never done it. We've never seen it. We're changing. We're actually healing our family tree, which is kind of fucking wild, right? And we're really one of the first generations, I'd say maybe in the second or third, that has this level of possibility and awareness. And, you know, like we have so much information we can get from the internet, from these conversations, from shared teachers, you know? And that changes everything because, like, I think when I was 12, 15, going through a breakup, there wasn't a resource. Now there's tons of resources, you know? Our resource really when I was young was sad music. And sad music at least allowed you on a processing basis to experience sadness. My friend Jamie Booth Cundy talks about how we like sad music to remind us that other people are sad too. You know, and that's such a beautiful thing to recognize. So, you know, I think I just want to close with one saying, if this is resonating with you, this is what the 8-week program is all about, the 8-week group coaching program. It's about stepping into this. It's about living in the fire for 8 weeks. And, you know, you won't be the same after it's done. I won't be the same. The group won't. The world won't. That's the power of transformation. The early bird ends tonight at midnight Pacific time, I believe. And how do you accept your truth? It's such a powerful question, Alex. You accept it by walking it. You accept it by living it. That's how you accept your truth. And that's how you even discover what it is, because it often lives below the layers of conditioning. You know, if you're a male and you're being asked to get into the depths of your emotionality, it might start with a feeling that you just feel that you're like, whoa, I got that feeling around music, or I got that feeling around, and know we have an access point. Actually, even the question is an access point. It knows that we're curious and we're wanting to deepen our understanding. If you ask, how do I create a great relationship? How do I create a life I love? How do I get more in touch with my feelings? How do I find my truth? The inquiry is actually the beginning of the adventure. And then what you'll notice is all these synchronicities, like a fucking guy like me popping on Instagram, talking to you about something that might resonate, and then you're like, oh, you got to follow the breadcrumbs. I might have mentioned a quote that resonated with you. I might have said something that resonated with you. And then you're like, oh, I got to follow the breadcrumbs. I got a podcast. You can go check that out. If you're feeling called to the group coaching program, go check that out. The link is in my bio, or you can go to createthelove.com/edge. And why do I think that grief is good? That'll be my last question that I answer. Grief is one of those emotions that demands to be felt. You know, you won't find a lot of things other than loss that demand that you get rooted down like a tree into the earth. Right? And you think about, what does a tree do? A tree sits. A tree doesn't move. A tree sits and it absorbs and it participates in the environment. And most of us, because of the culture we live in, have been taught to go after, you know, essentially the hero's journey, like rise, become, right? We don't think a lot about dive down and go to the depths. And we think of things like emotion that we might code as negative, sadness, grief, anger. We think of those things as actually something's wrong with us. If you have those feelings, you've been sold by pharma that there's a problem with you, as opposed to it's natural to feel that feeling, and then we should go explore what that feeling actually means. And you know, like the question, how do we accept ourselves? What is the point? Like, in trying to change anything, you're not accepting yourself. In seeking to be accepted or to accept yourself, you're not accepting yourself. You just are, you just do, you just be. It's not this fixed thing that once you do it, you'll just know. When you stop trying, you'll know. When you stop trying to become something that you're not. When you start to live into the emotion. You know, it's like when someone has a negative feeling and they say, I don't want to be sad, you're not accepting yourself. And sadness roots you down. It asks to be felt. Grief is one of the most powerful elixirs of change. Because if you do sit long enough, as Francis Weller will say, it will cook you. It cooks you. And he talks about how our soul dwells in the darkness. It likes to keep us on the edges of darkness. And I wouldn't have understood that when I was young, but I understand that now. If you go through deep loss, deep grief, you'll feel that there's actually a deep beauty to it. It's why we like art that represents grief, because there's a beauty to it. There's something captured in grief. Think about all the poetry, all the movies, all the music that's created from that. We don't even have to be going through a breakup, and you can listen to a song and you can be brought to your knees. And that's also one of the most connective emotions of humanity is grief. Joy can be faked. It's bullshit. Look at Instagram. Look at all the bullshit. We can pretend. You know, I interviewed Whitney, Sit with Wit, today about her book, Toxic Positivity, and it's so true, right? Like, joy is connective when it's a shared joyous flow experience, so I'm not minimizing that. But the presentation of joy can be really fake. The presentation of grief is pretty hard to do when the words are written in a certain coding. You're just, And you know, there's something really fascinating about pain. I remember Francis Weller talking about this, that pain itself has a form of narcissism to it, that we believe no one else could understand what I'm going through. No one else has been through what I'm going through. And while there is a uniqueness to the journey and the experience of grief, pain, loss, all those things, it's actually not unique because we've all experienced in different ways grief. And there will be some people who have experienced certain similar circumstances. And it's in the moving way of the wall that it's only me that you start to actually see your grief in other people. That you actually start to see loss, that you start to connect with others, right? Like I said, like that loneliness, that pain can have a narcissism to it. And that's the pain that separates us. But when we start to share our pain, other people go, oh man, I can't imagine. What can I do for you? And they might even say, that must be so hard. You know, I've been through something similar. And of course, nothing will ever be exactly the same. But it is something that binds us. Now we have to be mindful when we're in grief that we don't get stuck there. Because there's a power that's derived through the victim mindset too. There's a power that is derived from it because we do get to sort of inverse the hierarchy of power, right? Like if I say, you did that to me, which can be true. So again, not minimizing that. What happens is that we can stay stuck there because we sourced power. You can source power by telling people about your suffering. And research on the expression of stories about victimization on GoFundMe pages, the people who talk about trauma get more money. So you can see there is a reward system. It's not saying that the trauma is invalidated or doesn't deserve to be supported. Again, don't misread my words. Just know that it's easy to get stuck in. And the point is not to get stuck in it. The point is to use these experiences as, let's say, elixirs of transformation, you know? And so as we navigate these seas and oceans together, know that your story is unique and it's beautiful, and the world needs you in your full self-expression. It needs you in your wholeness. It needs you in your gifts. It needs you listening to the call. Because that rebellion that's required to find your voice, whatever is the rebellion in your family tree, the rebellion, right? Become the black sheep of the family, you know, which is really the one that is waking people up. It's changing the patterns of our family systems. And, you know, that saying that the cure for the pain is in the pain by Rumi. And there's another beautiful quote by Rumi that I shared in a newsletter tonight that is, why do you stay in the prison when the door's right there? When the door's wide open? And I think of the prisons that I've been in my life, that I've created, the prisons of other people's thoughts, the prisons of other people's feelings, the prison of cultural thought and feeling, the prison that is all these norms that we agree with, that this is how I'm supposed to be. And it's like, fuck supposed to. Who do you want to be? How do you live with grace, with kindness, with respect? But you can't do that if you're selling yourself out. Even if you're acting happy, it's contrived. Even if you're people-pleasing, but it's not from a sincere place. And then it's manipulative. It's not even real. You don't even get to be yourself, and we need you as yourself. And you think about that. Like, your partner will never get to know you if you don't say, I miss you. Your partner will never get to know you if you don't say, what I need is this. Your partner will never get to know you if you don't say, I really appreciate you. I appreciate how you show up. I appreciate how you contribute. I appreciate how you provide. I appreciate the cooking you do. I appreciate the love that you give our family. I appreciate the way that you look at me. I appreciate you. And we might say, I need you to express your appreciation of me. I need you to say thank you sometimes. I need you to acknowledge this thing. Do you see how all of the things I'm talking about are you stepping into your sovereignty and your wholeness? And even if you got scared, you keep going. Because if we stop because they're afraid, then we are afraid. We participate in co-creating a relationship that stays at a certain level that is adjusting to the person who has the highest level of fear. And that doesn't mean we can't be the one who's afraid, because that happens, right? We could be the one who's afraid. We could be the one that wants to run. And so we might say, my capacity is limited. I hear you. Oh man, I'm scared though, and I want to run. And so can we work on a pace that allows me to stretch, but not leave myself too? Because we have to think of the somatic possibility of someone's, perhaps their trauma that they've experienced. So we can work with a trauma therapist to expand that capacity. But we still have to work with someone. We still have to be moving towards something, right? When you think, what is codependency? Codependency is also co-signing both people's mediocrity. It's like I'm co-signing that you're not going to deal with this shit. My whole job in my life is going to be trying to get you to not deal with to try to get you to deal with your shit. And so I'm always trying to get you to do it. You're never fully doing it, and neither of us gets to be adults. But I get to act like I'm an adult because I'm trying to chase you to change, and you never get to change. But really, it's the child in me that's trying to chase you to change. The adult says, here's what I need from you. How might you show up? Is that something you want to do? Is that something that interests you? And the other adult goes, yes, no, here's what that would look like. Do you notice this? When there's two adults in a relationship, those things are invitations to more expansion. Everything I'm saying is about you stepping into your sovereignty. Everything. That's why every challenge in relationship, all of it, is about you standing in your power, your needs, your wants, and your sovereignty. Okay. Isn't that beautiful? So if you heard something and it brought up something for you and you're like, yes, I need to fucking do that, do it now. Now. There is no tomorrow. There's no blah, blah, blah future bullshit. And I talked about other dimensions, and there's another version of you in another dimension sitting with another version of me, and we're going, did you know that's possible? And I'm like, your version of you is like, tell her, tell him. Say it to them. Remind them. Can I just remind you to tell them? And here you are watching this as I'm talking to you, as your fucking soul is like, tell them. And so you might have come in with an intention and you got the message you needed. Maybe not the one you wanted, and maybe the one you wanted and the one you needed. Either way, listen. Step fully into your potential, fully into your power. You'll love yourself when you are answering the call of your potential. Self-worth won't even be a question, because every time you say yes to something, you're saying yes to your worth. You're saying yes to yourself. You're not chasing it anywhere. You're creating it. You're becoming it. You're not chasing someone to choose you when you are choosing yourself. You don't need it anymore. Someone's fucking with you, doesn't want to text you back, is wasting your time, doesn't want what you want. You don't care. Because you're so in your power that it doesn't fucking matter to you. So stop wasting your time with things that don't fucking matter and deal with what matters, which is choosing yourself. It's choosing yourself. And that's it. If you choose yourself in just a small way, that can literally be every morning, I'm going to commit to meditating 5 minutes. I'm going to start going for walks. I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to leave my phone in the morning and just show up for myself for the first hour. And I'm going to fill my mind full of nature, full of possibility. I'm going to show up each day doing that. And it can just start with that small thing, that small thing, that one small commitment that you make to yourself. As they say, the opposite of trauma is choice. Get into choice. We often sell that out because of the trauma, which that's the tough part, right? And it's part of that response, and it deserves to be sat with and acknowledged, and to just start with these small choices that are like, you know what, I'm going to have a cold shower every morning. I'm going to meditate every morning. Or I'm going to meditate 5 minutes a week, or 5 days a week. Pick something you can do, that you know you can do. You might not like having to do it because you made the commitment, but that's part where self-trust comes in. Self-trust comes in. And that is how you answer the damn call. Because the call will always come. And it will get more painful the more that you don't listen. And we'll complain about a painful life, but really what we are complaining about is the pain of not answering the messages that life is delivering. The pain is information. Will you let it cook you? The program starts on Monday, and it's jam-packed, 8-week group coaching program. The early bird ends tonight. There's a payment plan. The price goes up $1,000 tonight. So at midnight it goes up. And 8 weeks of 2-hour calls with me where we do some coaching, where we do some stuff. There's also a coach-led call, and there's also guest teachers. And I'm actually just adding more guest teachers, and there's more bonuses coming. So you're going to get those if you sign up, so you don't even have to worry about missing anything. But there are like Peter Crone's teaching, Selena Gray's teaching, Allison Bird's teaching, Kathy Haller's teaching. I've got a couple others that are like in the mix. Already those 4 are some of the most badass life changers in the world. And these are all going to be recorded if you can't make them live. If you go to the link in my bio, createthelove.com/edge, but you'll see the link in my bio, it's obvious. Go to that. I'll get Jeremy Goldberg. I love Jeremy Goldberg. Don't worry. I've got it. It's jam-packed. So go check out the link. Go sign up if you're feeling called, because it's going to be pure magic. This is about transforming and stepping into our potential, stepping into all of it, and saying yes to it, and having accountability, and having other people who value what we value and want what we want. That's what life is about. So I can't wait to see you. The container is going to be transformative. And there's going to be a good group of us on there jamming every week. There's going to be the option to participate in accountability pods. There's going to be the option to attend live coaching calls with a separate coach. And it's not full, so you can get in. Much love, everyone. This is going to be recorded, so you can watch this. If this is where our journey together, continues in this platform and in this place, and you're not called to the coaching program, much love. I am so grateful that I get to participate in your choice and your expansion. That's all that matters to me. So follow the feeling that says, saying yes to this feels expansive, and I'm a little afraid of the expansion it's going to ask of me. And I'm running the whole main Q calls every week, and then there's a separate call with a coach to answer questions that you might have. And so, much love, everyone. I can't wait. It's going to be incredible.